Hello again, people. I have finished a book, Exterminate All the Brutes. And the subtitle here is One Man's Odyssey into the Heart of Darkness and the Origins of European Genocide. This was a really good book. It's hard to explain. One of them bizarre books where, one paragraph will be on something and then he switches and goes to something completely different. There's a lot of really bizarre paragraphs in there that I have not even figured out. This is about the Heart of Darkness, the book, which I've read a couple of different versions of that. I mean, the second version that I read was just annotated, and I really like that book, and I really like that time period, 1850 to 1910, something like that. This guy, this author, his name is Sven Lindqvist, and I can't ever read the name Sven without thinking of Sven Hoek from the Ren and Stimpy cartoons. He's a Swedish guy, and he does travel around through the Sahara, and he just barely gets to sub-Saharan Africa, and he writes about that a little bit, about what it's like to be in some of these cities. Talks about a lot of different authors in there that I, had no idea existed. There's a great bibliography in the back for some books that were written at that time, and it's not easy to read those books because they come from a whole different mindset. Not everybody was in that mindset. H.G. Wells, there's going to be a little paragraph from H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds that I'm going to read here. And I have never read that book. Of course, I've seen the movie, and I saw the new one, too. First, I'm going to read this really small little paragraph on page 2. And this kind of sums things up for me, because when people ask me why I read what I read, I tell them that I want to understand why everything is all fucked up right now. And this kind of sums it up. You already know enough. So do I. It is not knowledge we lack. What is missing is the courage to understand what we know and to draw conclusions. And the awful truth is, I think I've drawn my conclusions already. And it's not good. Sven Lindqvist, 172 pages. This was published in 1992. And there's a little short paragraph here, bottom of page 45, and I'm not even going to read the entire paragraph. It's just kind of interesting. Let's see if I can find it here. Pre-industrial Europe had little that was in demand in the rest of the world. Our most important export was force. All over the rest of the world, we were regarded at the time as nomadic warriors in the style of the Mongols and the Tartars. They reigned supreme from the backs of horses, we from the decks of ships. And sometimes it's not easy to look at things from somebody else's perspective. I mean, we think that, and you can't help, I can't help thinking that Europeans are great, and when actually we're the ones that fucked everything all up. And that's kind of the gist of this book. a lot of authors maintained that you know, that we were, just because of who we had the right to go and exterminate people. The Germans with the Herero, and the Americans with the indigenous Americans, the New Zealanders, the poor people that lived on Tasmania, and there's another one that I'm going to read here about the Canary Islands, and one of the books that I had just read, there was a bit in there about the Canary Islands, and one of the islands was totally uninhabited, just covered from shore to shore by this beautiful forest, big, huge trees. And the Spanish, when they saw it, they said, well, fuck, we can't grow no sugar cane here. So they lit the island on fire. They destroyed every last acre of that forest. Cartridges, bottom of page 52, and this was just a little bit interesting. Of course, we've all run into this word before. Bottom of page 52. The new cartridges were particularly good for use in tropical climates, but on savages, and when he's saying new cartridges, that meant cartridges that were sealed up, so it didn't matter whether they got wet or not, they would still fire. The new cartridges were particularly good for use in tropical climates, but on savages, the bullet did not always have the desired effect. Savages in parentheses. For they often continued their charges even after being hit 4 or 5 times. The answer became the Dum Dum bullet, named after the factory in Dum Dum, outside Calcutta, and patented in 1897. The lead core of the Dum Dum bullet explodes the casing, causing large, painful wounds that do not heal well. So I had no idea that there was a city named Dum Dum. I don't know what I thought. Of course, a Dum Dum bullet is what we now call a hollow point. Page 79. This is the excerpt from War of the Worlds. And I suppose I might have to find War of the Worlds and find an original H.G. Wells version and read it. And this H.G. Wells is talking about the Martians. This is fiction, they don't exist. Before we judge them too harshly, we must remember what ruthless and utter destruction our own species has wrought, not only upon animals such as the vanquished bison and the dodo, but upon its inferior races. Inferior there should be in parentheses, but it's not. The Tasmanians, in spite of their human likeness, were entirely swept out of existence in a war waged by European immigrants in the space of 50 years. Are we such apostles of mercy as to complain if the Martians warred in the same spirit? So it sounds like maybe H.G. Wells was not much of an imperialist. Page 103 to page 104. And I don't know how to pronounce this. Ganches? These are indigenous to the Canary Islands, to Tenerife, I believe. Where the hell? Did I write down the wrong page again? It doesn't have anything about the Ganches. Ganches is spelled, I wrote down obviously the wrong page. It's spelled Gaunches, and it's just another, these were some Africans that had somehow made their way to the Canary Islands and lived there isolated, for a couple of 100 years, developed their own culture and everything, and the Spanish went to war against them, and they are no more. They killed every last one of them. And of course, I think we should all be familiar with the Tasmanians and how that, it came to a point where there was only 8 of them left, and then it came to a point where there was only 1 left, and by the time that guy died, there was people just waiting to cut his head off and have the skull so they could sell the skull, and it's just horrendous. Thank you for watching.